Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to be discussing Naxxramas loot priority for casters in Classic WoW. If you've been following my channel, I've done this for all the phases. I've talked about Molten Core, BWL, AQ, and now it's finally time for Naxx loot. Unlike all my other videos, however, I'm going to split this one up into two parts. This video is going to be discussing all the caster loot with the exception of Tier 3. I'm just going to talk about all the tier gear in a separate video that I will make and upload shortly. But on the new Anniversary Realms, Naxx is right around the corner at the time of recording this video, so I think it's the perfect time. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. This should be an exciting one. It's all the best loot in the game. So first, let's talk about Atiesh. Now, before I go into loot priority, I think it's important to kind of think about, especially loot that drops off like KT, right? You don't necessarily need to be optimizing perfectly for progression, right? If you're already killing the last boss in the game, right? Like you've killed KT, you've done it. You can do it in whatever gear you're currently wearing in the raid. If you're a top super mega giga chad speedrun guild, mega parse guild, then it still does really matter a lot. But for the average guild, once you've killed KT, clearly you can beat the game. So the loot priority may not seem quite as important as other phases, but at the end of the day, I think it still makes sense to give loot to the casters that benefit the most from it. But with that little spiel out of the way, let's talk about Atiesh. First and foremost, before each class, this is a legendary staff, obviously. Very exciting for whoever gets it. I think it's most important that you give it to someone who deserves it, rather than the class. Someone who's been in the guild for a long time, who's performed well, who doesn't start drama, helps out, that kind of deal. But if we want to look at classes, as this video is the focus, that's the focus of this video, who is it most optimal for? And I think pretty much anyone's going to tell you Warlock and Mage, right? Not the healers. Let's look at each staff. So the Druid staff, it gives you a bunch of feral attack power, 300 healing, and then each staff has a party bonus, right? So the Druid one is 11 MP5. The Priest staff is similar in that it gives you 300 healing. It also gives you 120 spell damage. So for Shadow Priest, it's not even that bad. Interesting that the Druid one does not, so I guess screw Boomkins. But it gives you 300 healing, just like the Druid staff, and then the party bonus is 62 healing. And obviously it has like stamina, spirit, that kind of deal. The Mage one, 150 spell damage, just like the Warlock, 150 spell damage. The Mage one has 2 hit, and the Warlock one has 2 crit. You would think they would swap that around, make a little bit more sense, but they didn't. And then the equip bonus for Mage is 2% crit for your entire party. And the Warlock one is 33 spell damage for your entire party. So these stats are just better on Mage and Warlock, right? Like for healers, you're better off with healing weapons and healing offense from Naxx, or they're at least very comparable. And the equip bonus isn't super exciting. Like in Classic WoW, let's say you're a Resto Druid, right, with Atiesh. You're typically not going to be in a group with 4 other healers. Same with like a Priest. You're kind of spread out. Maybe there'll be like 1 or 2 other healers in a group, but you're not like stacking all 5 healers in one group typically, right? Especially on Horde side, because there's like a shaman in every group. And you don't need like 15, 20 healers, right? So you're not going to have like a whole group of healers. So for that reason, the equip bonus for each of these classes, the two healing classes, loses a bit of value. Whereas when you compare to Mage and Warlock, there typically is like a caster group, right? So if you're a Mage with Atiesh, you're probably giving this 2% crit to 4 of the casters. Same with Warlock. If you're Warlock with Atiesh, you're probably giving that 33 spell damage to like 4 other casters and yourself. So for those reasons, the stabs are typically better on Mage and Warlock. But if I had to, somebody put a gun to my head and said, is it better on a Mage or is it better on a Warlock? We have a Mage in our guild that's deserving of it, and we have a Warlock in our guild who's deserving of it. I think the answer changes based on whether you want to prioritize the rest of Classic or TBC, which is coming shortly after Naxx, right? Like we know these anniversary realms are transitioning to TBC. So why do I say that it's a little bit better on Mage for Classic and Warlock for TBC? Well, the Mage equip bonus is 2% crit. On average, that is more DPS than 33 spell damage. Plus, Mages kind of slightly outperform Warlocks as a rule. And then if like you're on Classic Era and you're like in an Naxx raid, you might have like 3 Mages at that TS, right? That's not going to happen on these anniversary realms. Like the crit just keeps getting exponentially more powerful. Like if you have 3 Mages at TS in a group or something like that, they're all getting like 6% additional crit. It gets kind of insane. But the Warlock one is better in TBC. Now, why do I say that? Well, as soon as we get the patch that brings us into TBC, right? Not necessarily going into the Dark Portal, but like pre-patch, right? Percent crit and percent hit and stuff like that changes to a rating system. It'll be like crit rating or hit rating, like 15 hit ratings worth 1% hit or something like that, right? And at level 60, whatever hit rating 2% crit is will still be 2% crit. But as you level, once you hit level 61, level 62, level 63, all the way up to level 70, your crit will actually go down every time you level because the crit and hit rating, as you level up, each rating point equals less of a percent chance to hit. So as you level, like when you're leveling in TBC, you will actually be getting weaker. Like your crit and hit will go down percentage-wise, right? Because it all changes to rating that is scaled for level 70. So at level 70 in TBC, this crit rating will not nearly be 2% hit. It'll probably be closer to like 1% crit. I said hit, I meant crit. It'll probably be closer to like 1% crit for your whole group, which is still nice. But this 33 spell damage does not change. Spell damage doesn't change in pre-patch, right? So at level 70, you're still getting 33 damage for yourself and your whole party, whereas the Mage one will be more like 1% crit. Maybe even less. Maybe a little bit more, but like about like 1% crit, right? Which is not going to be as valuable as 33 damage. Also, in TBC, in the raid comp, there is typically 2 caster groups, usually, right? There's a Warlock group and then like a Mage group. The Warlock group will probably have like 3 Warlocks, a Boomkin, and like an Elisham, a Resto Shaman or something, right? Or 4 Warlocks and a Shaman. Screw the Boomkin. Something like that. But the Mage group they need a Resto Shaman for Mana Tide Totem, because if they're playing Arcane Mage, they're very mana starved. So they definitely need like a Resto Shaman. And then also they're going to need a Shadow Priest to give them mana via Vampiric Touch, right? So The Resto Sham is not benefiting from the crit very much. The Shadow Priest is not benefiting from the crit very much because they don't scale very well with crit. And there's be like 2 mages, Shadow Priest, the Resto Sham, and then like something else, probably, who knows, Holy Priest. So not as many people are benefiting from the crit, and the people who are benefiting from the crit don't scale super well with crit. Like Shadow Priest does not scale very well with crit. So this equip bonus for Mage is not nearly as attractive as if a Warlock had this in TBC. They're giving the Boomkin, the Ellie, and the 2 other Warlocks and themselves 33 damage. But it's important to note, if you're thinking about TBC, if you decide, okay, this Warlock deserves this staff, let's give it to the Warlock, they should be prepared, if they're going to accept this legendary staff, to know that you should be wearing Atiesh in TBC until Black Temple. If you take into account the 33 damage for 5 casters, you'll be sacrificing DPS yourself by wearing Atiesh because it's a level 60 weapon at level 70. Like there's stuff in Karazhan that's better than this. Certainly in like SSC and whatever. But if you take into account the equip bonus, it's not worth taking this off for the whole benefit of the raid until you get like Zardoon and Black Temple. So if you're the recipient of Atiesh as a Warlock, you should be prepared to sacrifice your own personal DPS all the way until Black Temple, where the weapon like Zardoon is so much better than Atiesh that it warrants taking it off at the loss of that 33 spell damage for the rest of your party. But yeah, pretty much give it to whoever deserves it. I mean, it's the end of the game. If you have a damn druid who's been awesome for your guild, give it to the druid. You know what I mean? But if you're trying to min-max, it's best on Mage and Classic, best on Warlock and TBC. Moving forward, let's talk about some staffs. So there's 2 very good staffs in Naxx, Soul Seeker and Brimstone Staff. They both have a lot of spell damage, 126 or 113. Brimstone has 2 hit, 1 crit, and Soul Seeker has 2 crit and Spell Pen. As amazing as these staffs are, people typically aren't losing their mind over it because it's not Atiesh or Wraithblade. But these staffs are still insane. I mean, people still kind of lose their mind over like Staff of Shadowflame. And look at that compared to these. Like these are so much better. But as far as prio is concerned, for Soul Seeker I have Mage Ellie Boomkin, followed by Warlock, followed by Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest last because they don't really scale too well with crit, and they're getting End of Dreams. Anyways, End of Dreams plus Offhand is better for them than this, or at least comparable. And I have Warlock lower than Mage Ellie Boomkin because between the 2 staffs, Brimstone Staff is more attractive for Warlock because it has 2 hits. Soul Seeker has no hit, making it not as attractive for Warlock. Then Mage Ellie Boomkin, equal prio. No reason to differentiate, I would say. Of course, mages are outperforming Ellies and Boomkins, but it's not Wraithblade, right? It's Soul Seeker. I give it to whoever is not getting Wraithblade or Atiesh. Pretty much the same story with Brimstone Staff, except I have Warlock and Mage swapped, because the 2 hit on this makes it more attractive for Warlock than like a Mage. And still Shadow Priest on the bottom because they're getting End of Dreams, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, these staffs are both very, very good, but it's not quote-unquote BIS for mages and locks, so they really want Wraithblade. If you feel like saying Ellie Boomkin above Mage and Lock on these staffs, I get it. Because if you just Google like a BIS list, I'm pretty sure that Ellie and Boomkin have Brimstone Staff as their BIS. because they can't use Wraithblade, and they can't use Atiesh. Because, yes, technically Boomkin can use Atiesh, but doesn't give him any spell power. So honestly, potentially, like move Warlock down on this. Just give it to Ellie Boomkin, because Warlock can potentially get Wraithblade. Same deal here. You could put Mage lower, like up with the Warlock, and just give this like Ellie Boomkin because they don't get Wraithblade. But personal preference. People don't usually go insane over these because it's not Wraithblade. But now, let's talk about some more weapons. Wraithblade. I've been talking about it already, so I wasn't even on the screen yet. Insane one-handed sword. 95 spell damage, crit and hit on a one-hander. This is insane. If you look at the stats, Wraithblade plus Saffron's left eye is better than, or at least very comparable to Atiesh for mages and locks. Wraithblade is insane. Like right now in AQ40, you're probably using rank 14 or the Sharthan Seal of the Femur that has like 72 damage and 1 crit. This gives you an additional 23 damage and a hit. It's crazy. But it is a sword, so only mages and locks can use it. No reason to differentiate between them. Mage equal lock. Best weapon in the game. Moving down, I have End of Dreams. This is a mace, so mages and locks cannot use this one. This one has the same spell damage as Wraithblade, but instead of hit and crit, gives you MP5. So not as good. A lot of feral attack power as well. Shadow Priest Feral. This is Shadow Priest best in slot, and also Feral best in slot, other than Atiesh, which they're probably not getting, and Manual Crowd Pummeler, which you're not always using and always pumping your Manual Crowd Pummelers like on trash and stuff. So I would say Shadow Priest equal Feral, then Boomkin Ellie if they want it. It's a pretty good weapon. Very good actually, but they kind of want the stabs instead. But very good for them as well. The reason I have Shadow Priest above Boomkin Ellie is because these staffs are more attractive for Boomkin Ellie than Shadow Priest, because it has like crit and hit and stuff. Whereas Shadow Priest at this point really just want like a bunch of spell power. And then healers, it's an okay healing weapon, 95. But of course like Cthulhu Mace has like 180, right? And rank 14 has 140 or 150 or something. So it's not insane for healers, but it's possible that you are lacking a good healing weapon if you're lazy and didn't do rank 14. And then like Diamond Flask for warriors. But most warriors are rank 14 anyway, so they have their healing mace. Midnight Haze, dagger, 85 spell damage. Comparable to rank 14 in Sharthan Seal of Femur. So not as exciting as Wraithblade or the stabs or anything, but it's a good dagger. I wrote Ellie Boomkin, then Mage Lock, then Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest last because though it's very good for them, you might look at it and be like, that's kind of a Shadow Priest weapon. It has no hit, no crit, just a bunch of spell damage. Yes, that is true. But Shadow Priest get End of Dreams, which is better for them. And like only 2 people in your raid probably even really need End of Dreams, right? Like some raids don't have a Shadow Priest or a Feral. So then End of Dreams is kind of just going to like Boomkin Ellie. But it's common that a guild will not have both of these, or like one of each at most. So End of Dreams, it'll drop eventually, and it'll be going to your Shadow Priest pretty quickly. That's why I have Shadow Priest at the bottom for Midnight Haze. But at the end of the day, it's comparable to AQ40 gear. This one is not as exciting as Wraithblade or the staffs or anything. But I put Ellie Boomkin, throw them a bone because Mage and Lock are getting a Wraithblade eventually. Then Shadow Priest. Some other weapons, I have a couple offhands. Gem of Nerubis. This is kind of just a PvP offhand for whoever wants it. It is worse than the AV offhands for PvE. Certainly worse than like Saffron's Left Eye or this one that's similar to this in AQ40, right? So this is really a PvP item. Then Saffron's Left Eye, the best offhand in the game. 26 damage, 1 hit, 1 crit. Mage Lock, because they are the high performers. Followed by Ellie Boomkin. Followed by Shadow Priest. Because this is probably just a hair better than like AV offhand for them. Right? I mean, the 1 crit and 1 hit is probably better than the additional 8 spell power you get from Tome of Shadow Force. But not that much better, right? Because Shadow Priests really don't scale too well with hit and crit. So, Shadow Priest last on this one, unfortunately for them. Some wands. Wand of Fates. 12 damage, 1 hit. Staminant. Very good. This is Warlock Prio, I would say. It has hit. It is the only wand of the game with hit. Warlocks really need hit. So, Warlock Prio. Followed by Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest do still need some hit. I would say most Shadow Priests would prefer this over like Touch of Chaos or something, right? Then last Mage, because mages, they're getting Doomfinger. Talk about that. 16 damage, 1 crit. Mage, Shadow Priest, Warlock last. I have Shadow Priest in the middle for each of these, kind of because they can use either somewhat well, but not as good as like Mage for Doomfinger or Lock for Wand of Fates, right? So really, Wand of Fates is Lock Prio, Doomfinger is Mage Prio, then whatever drops after that, give it to the Shadow Priest. They'll be fine with Touch of Chaos until then. Moving on, I'm going to talk about rings next. But before I talk about all the DPS rings that drop in Naxx, I wanted to point out all of the Tier 3 rings. These drop off KT, and it's just for one class. So obviously mages roll in the mage ring, warlocks roll in the warlock ring. I wanted to make this slide just to point out the shaman, priest, and druid ring are all awful for DPS. Because typically they're healing. But of course, Shadow Priest, Boomkins, Ellies exist, but they don't get to use the Tier 3 ring because it sucks for them. The Warlock ring is okay, but it's really just a PvP ring. 24 stam, 29 spell damage. This is less damage than Ring of Spell Power from Molten Core. So, not terribly exciting for PvE. However, the Mage ring is very good. 30 damage and 1% crit. Very, very good for a mage. But now let's talk about the rings that everybody could wear, right? There are 3 notable rings in Naxxramas. Ring of Eternal Flame, Seal of the Damned, Band of the Inevitable. First I get the obvious one out of the way. Ring of Eternal Flame. Biscame for Fire Mage. So give it to the mages. 34 damage, 1% crit. Very, very good. Most mages, I would say, are going to be wearing this and Ring of the Fallen God from AQ40 as their bis. However, if they don't need the hit, they may wear Ring of Eternal Flame plus their Tier 3 ring for more crit. Then we have Band of the Inevitable. Very similar to Ring of the Fallen God from AQ40. It is 1 spell power less, and it's missing I think it's 5 stam, 6 int. But still, crazy ring. 36 damage, 1% hit. This, along with Ring of the Fallen God, is bis for Warlock, Shadow Priest, Ellie, Boomkin, everybody but Mage pretty much. Mages really don't need like 2 hit rings. They don't need Ring of the Fallen God and Band of the Inevitable. That's why I have Mage bottom prio on this. Mage first prio on Ring of the Eternal Flame. And I have Warlock above LA Boom and Shadow Priest just because Warlocks tend to outperform them. But for that reason, I have Ellie Boopkin higher on Seal the Damned, along with Warlock, Mage, then Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest last because this is not a very good ring for them. They'd rather have Ring of Spell Power from Molten Core. They really don't need the hit and crit as much as the rest of the casters, and it only has 21 damage. But this Seal the Damned is a very good ring as well. It's an upgraded version of the AQ20 ring for Warlocks. That one I think has 14 stam and 14 damage and 1 hit, 1 crit. This one has 17 stam, 21 damage. This Seal the Damned is almost as good as Band of the Inevitable for like a Warlock who can utilize the hit from each ring. 21 damage and 1 crit is only like a hair lower than 36 damage. So for Warlock, if you get Seal the Damned, you could probably pass Seal the Band of... losing my mind. If you get Seal the Damned as a Warlock and you already have like Ring of the Fallen God, I would then pass Band of the Inevitable off to the other Warlocks or whatever. Like, Seal the Damned is very close to Band of the Inevitable, just not quite as good. However, Band of the Inevitable is a little bit more attractive on Trash, where you kind of want to stack spell damage for like Hellfire, right? So overall, as a Warlock, what you really want is Band of the Inevitable with your Ring of the Fallen God. But Seal the Damned is very close. Yeah, this is my prio on the rings. Mages get Ring of Eternal Flame, Warlocks get Band of the Inevitable, meme specs get Seal the Damned. There we go. I just wanted to include these. These all are all awful. An offhand with MP5, a ring with MP5, the neck with MP5, and then this weird resist trinket. This I would actually like for PvP, but that's because I'm weird and I collect random niche things for PvP. But for PvE, I mean, this thing sucks, right? So whoever wants it, for whatever reason, have fun. Easy slide. All right, some contested loot. Cloak of the Necropolis, this game for everyone. However, it is only a hair better than the Cthulhu Cloak for Shadow Priest, so they are bottom prio. However, for Mage Lock Boomkin, this is definitely their best. But I have a Mage Lock above Boomkin because if you're meme spec, you kind of know that you're going to be a little bit lower on prio for these big ticket items. It is what it is. I played Shadow Priest in 2019. I know how it is. Next, Leggings of Polarity. Pretty much same exact thing as Cloak of the Necropolis. As far as prio is concerned, it's a lot of people's bis, but Mage Lock are the high performers of Classic as far as classes are concerned, so they're getting this first. However, if you are a Warlock who happens to have Fel-Infused leggings from Kazakh, then these Leggings of Polarity sim almost identical to Fel-Infused leggings, so you really don't need these as a Warlock if you have Fel-Infused. But the Shadow Damage legs kind of suck for Trash because you can't Hellfire with them and gain a benefit. Boomkin next, like I said, pretty much same thing with the Cloak of Necropolis, and then Shadow Priest last because you have other options that are very comparable. For one, if you get Fel-Infused leggings from Kazakh, that's definitely your best as a Shadow Priest for sure. Then even like Bloodvine leggings or the what is it? It's a tailoring legs like Flare Core or something from Molten Core. I think it has like 40 spell damage or something. But no, it's like stam and spell damage, that's it, or something like that. The point is, Shadow Priests have other legs that are good for them. Hell, you can go with Leggings of Black Blizzard. It's not that much worse. Soul Harvester's Bindings. The only crit bracers in the game, I'm pretty sure. For that reason, it is Mage Prio. Warlocks and everyone else will be using hit bracers because they still need hit, and mages don't. However, Shadow Priests don't either, but they're using Burrower bracers that have 28 spell damage. So, mage for sure on these. People might be clamoring over them because it's exciting, crit bracers, but really give it to the mages. They can drop hit much more easily than everybody else. Other than Shadow Priests, but Shadow Priests don't really want this anyways. Pretty much same story for Rime Covered Mantle. Mage Prio as well. It's crit. Mages love crit. Give it to the mages. Warlock's tier 3 shoulder is very good. I think it's 36 damage and 1% hit. So that's why Warlocks are down here. Shadow Priest and Boomkin above Warlock because they don't have really good tier 3 brace or shoulders for healing. For DPS. Their tier 3 shoulders are for healing. So Shadow Priest and Boomkins really like this as well, but they're not going to get as much mileage out of it as a mage because they don't scale as well with crits. They can use Mantle, Blackwing Cabal, and be satisfied. Elisham last because look at these insane trash shoulders for Shaman. 26 damage, crit, and hit. This is just nuts. If this wasn't male and Shaman specific, everybody would want these. So that's what Shamans get. So Rime Covered Mantle, Soul Harvester Bindings, Mage. Give it to the Mage. Warlocks might want it, but they don't know what they're doing. Give it to the Mage. This slide is kind of unusual stuff. Both Preceptor's Hat and Crystal Web Robe, pretty much the same story. The highest spell damage helm and chest in the game, but it has no hit, no crit, nothing like that. This is Shadow Priest all day. And then whoever wants it. People may want this for like a Lotheb set where you have like infinite crit. So you really just stack a bunch of spell damage gear. So other people may want this for niche situations. But this is a Shadow Priest Biss. So give it to your one Shadow Priest if you even have one. And then whoever wants it /roll. This Necro Knight's Garb, it's a PvP thing. High armor chest if you have like an armor set for PvP. Congrats. These are pretty much PvP items. However, they're pretty good for PvE, but they're not Biss, even like if they came out in AQ40, right? So like this cloak, 28 damage, pretty good. Better than a lot of other stuff, but it's worse than the Cthulhu cloak. It's worse than the other Naxx cloak, of course. It's comparable to like the BWO cloak, right? Off Nefarian. So it's really a PvP thing because it has good stamina and spell pen, right? Same with this neck. Less damage than Choker the Fire Lord from MC. But it has more stamina, more int, and it has spell pen. So it's really a PvP thing. But if somebody happens to have never gotten Choker, never have gotten Amulet of Eklanash, never have gotten the neck off Kel'Thuzad, give it to them for PvE. But if you already have pretty geared casters, it's a PvP thing. Some interesting things on this slide. I put the KT neck over here. 15 damage, 2% crit. Mage. They will get the most out of this. For Ellie, Boomkin, and Warlock, this sims very, very, very similarly to the one off Twin Imps in AQ40. The one that has 27 damage, 1% crit. Mage is the only class that this sims a good amount better than the one off Twins. So, because, I mean, Mages, Fire Mage, they really want to stack the crit. So give this to Mage. Shadow Priest last. It is not good for them at all. Restrained Essence of Saffron. Best trinket in the game, arguably. 40 passive damage. And then an on-use toe-up, pretty much. It's very, very good. Mage Warlock. They're the pumpers. Give it to them. Then everyone else. Then this trinket's interesting. Not everybody will even want it. But if they do, Mage Warlock, then everybody else. Because Mage and Warlock are the only two casters that can really potentially have threat issues. Shadow Priest kind of, but Shadow Priest really probably doesn't want this because it gives you crit, right? So the Mage and Warlock are the only casters that really can potentially have threat problems, especially on like Trash, Mages, Arcane Explosioning. This is an attractive item, but the on use reduces your threat, right? And then the equip all the time is 2% crit. Interesting trinket. If I had it, I would play around with it, but it's people aren't losing their mind over this typically. But yeah, if people want it, Mage Warlock. I think this is the last slide. Frost Res gear. Give it to people who need Frost Res. Nothing more to say about that. But yeah, that is the video. I hope you enjoyed it. This one is hopefully a little bit shorter than my Q41 because I'm not talking about tier gear. That is coming soon. But yeah, thank you for watching and stay tuned for the next one.